About 15 years ago or so, Mars really started looking at supply chain as biological systems. In 1989, witch's broom, Manilioptera perniciosa, wiped out the Brazilian cocoa supply. And that had been our second largest area of origin where we purchased, and the second largest producer in the world. And in 18 months it was gone. We realized we had to act. And the first thing we needed to do was to have enough information to act wisely. The cacao genome was sequenced in 2 years, 2 months, and 10 days, released on September 10th, 2010. Much to the surprise of the world, we gave it away. And the reason to give it away is if I control it, then change happens at my pace. And how much were we willing to spend, invest, what have you, to make that change when you had a world in West Africa and South America and growing in East Asia that wanted to grow cacao as well as a fundamental crop. But it was locked in the past. 100 years of research and the yields were somewhere between 350 and 400 kilos. And we knew you could get 1,500, 2,000 kilos with an improved germplasm that was based on the genome. Produce more on less, and then use the other land for equally important food crops, for nutrition, for dietary supplementation, whatever you want to use the term as, to make a real impact. We realized that it wasn't sufficient. We had to do what I would call putting farmers first. Social change only comes when good farming practices are in place, because the income goes up, someone can make a different decision, whether it's about education or clothing or dietary or any of those questions. None of them are answered well in poverty. They're certainly answered much better when one begins to think about prosperity. So we decided we would train farmers in best practices. We turned to the World Agroforestry Center, ICRAF, to do the work on the ground for us. Working together, we built a curriculum. Working together, we built cocoa development centers that then led into cocoa village centers, which means now we're on the ground in maybe 55 places in Subre province, sharing information, sharing the best germplasm, sharing all these conversations that are critical. And the idea of putting the farmer first is really quite real. Standing alone is egotistical. What if we got together with all of our competitors and the giants of the supply chain? The big traders and the big users now work together under the World Cocoa Foundation called Cocoa Action. So all of a sudden, our 10 million plus their 10 million plus somebody else's 10 million adds up to almost $100 million a year in impact potentiality. Now imagine that taken over a decade, it's $1 billion. So now we can talk to each other in a way that is not collusion, it's not price fixing. What we talk about is the solution from the ground up. Yield is obviously key, not to oversaturate the market is key, but as there's a 2% drive of interest in buying chocolate every year for the past 25 years or so, and we see it accelerating, we know that we need another 1 million tons by 2020. That can only be done through productivity. It can only be done through having appropriate fertilizer, through microcredit, through social programs. When you add all those pieces together as a collaboration, you have something that's really quite fantastic. And that's where we are today. Governments can't do this alone. Everyone knows that. I mean, they have to build roads, they have to build schools, they have to build infrastructure. So we're the help in all of that process. And for us, and I think for the industry, it's the future model for all types of agriculture interventions. Because how otherwise can you do it?